Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
Doing all right. We're getting a recording in today, squeezing it in before your big brother Alex and kids come to visit. And the house is pretty close to ready. I think I got enough time to finish what I'm supposed to do on my list. And
you're cutting it a little close.
When you come up, help join in the cleanup afterwards. I'm getting that on record again.
Yeah, well, we thankfully deleted the version of this recording where I agreed to help clean, so that's not on record anymore. No one can prove that I agreed to help clean up afterwards. But anyway, yes, we are here today. Not a whole lot of Packers news going on, so we figured we would kind of rehash an episode that we did last year, because both going into last year and going into this year, I think it's fair to say that the Packers as a team have pretty lofty goals. And I think that is to say that they are looking to compete for a Super Bowl. Brian Gutekunst mentioned in this offseason that there's got to be more urgency around the team to, compete for championships. And the previous season, both, I think it was Josh Jacobs and Keyshawn Nixon mentioned that the goal was to, take that next step to being a Super Bowl contender. And so what we did last offseason and what we're going to do again this offseason is kind of compare them to the past Super Bowl winners. So we're going to look back over the last 10 years to the 10 teams that won the Super Bowl and then also the 10 teams that made the Super Bowl but lost, and kind of see how we think the Packers stack up to those teams. So we're going to kind of compare them using a variety of metrics, PFF grade. I think you looked at DVOA as well. Just a number of things like, hey, 7 out of the 10 teams had top 10 passing offenses, stuff like that. And just kind of think about whether or not the Packers can get there, what the Packers looked like last year, what it would take for them to get to those marks this year. But anyway, so we're going to be looking at that. Before we get into any of that, though, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear, subscribe. Tell a friend. Tell a family member. Tell your dog. Tell anyone you know. Whether that's,
if your dog wants to listen to every one of our episodes,
yep,
that's cool.
Yeah, just leave that just running in a loop for them. Maybe the sounds of our voices really help them. Maybe they don't. Maybe turn it off. I don't know.
Maybe he'll be covering their ears on the ground.
You'll never know unless you try. But anyway, whether
it's like they'll be like fireworks.
Apple, Spotify, YouTube, leave a comment, leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. We love talking Packers with anyone. If you want updates on when we're putting out new episodes or what, Packers roster moves, keeping you up to date on all the latest Packers news, follow us on Blue Sky at Father-Son Packer. For the latest on when new episodes are out, the latest on Packers roster moves, coaching hires, content from other Packers content creators, one-stop shopping for everything Titletown. But anyway, Dad.
And right, remember, Titletown. We're here to talk about Super Bowls because this is Titletown. And we're doing this episode now because we're supposed to have more urgency this year, right? In this offseason, more urgency. So
yeah, exactly.
We're also going to talk about Super Bowl as well.
Exactly. Sense of urgency. It's not called Titletown for no reason. And so I think it's fair to, look at these teams and compare how they stack up against them. And I know in some ways you can kind of actually look at direct comparisons to the team that just won the Super Bowl last year, which was the Eagles, who the Packers played twice. Week 1, pretty close. Almost had them, I would say. A couple missed field goals short of really being in that game. And then, in the playoffs, a little less close. Although, there were times where it did feel like if the Packers could just put one or two drives together, they were right there for a second. But it did also feel like that's such an odd game to me because I rewatched that a week and a half ago, I think it was, when rewatched the condensed version of that game. And it was close, but I don't know about you. It never quite felt like the Packers were really that. It did feel like, the score was right there if they went and got another, put a drive together at any point, but it also felt like, okay, they're just never going to put a drive together also was the other problem.
Or did you feel like even if they get this drive together and get a touchdown, will they be able to get the stop?
Well, they were getting stops. I mean, that's fair because whenever they actually needed to stop last year, they never actually could get
that
one.
Was right. Remember we talked about that in the fourth quarter when you need to get a stop to get the ball back or keep the lead.
Terrible at that last year.
Did it twice out of 10 or something like that?
Yeah, we have the numbers. Oh goodness, we'll have to go look at them again. But yeah, we can mention that in the start of next podcast once we go back and look them up. But yeah, I mean, just thinking about that game, I mean, obviously ifs and buts, but you do wonder what would have happened if they had called that fumble on the opening play correctly.
Oh, that changes everything.
It does change everything.
They would have had the ball, if they called it correctly, they would have had the ball the 40 because it was a quite clear crown of the helmet to his grill.
They fined him. Like the NFL acknowledged that was like an illegal hit. They fined Oren Burks for that hit, so it was an illegal hit. But even still, even if they don't give the penalty, I mean, just like
clear
we had the
that
ball.
you can see from Nixon.
Yeah. But so, and I do think, just as a brief aside, like a little bit ghosts of Packers past in some ways, where it's like, hey, if you do something stupid, like don't you remember like 2-3 years ago where it really felt like, hey, if they make a mistake at the beginning of the game, they just like crumble. They just like completely like let it snowball and just fall apart. And it did feel like a little bit of that in some ways. But overall, it just felt like close, but not close all at the same time somehow in that game, where it was like, okay, like they can't really score and pull away from us, but we're not really doing anything to close the gap in any meaningful way or like put any kind of momentum together. Like we never had momentum in that game at any point.
No, we didn't. And we were, the attrition rate was crazy.
That's also true.
By the end, we lost 2 starting offensive linemen, 2 more starting receivers.
Yeah.
We were down to offensive lineman number 8, I think.
8 or 9, depending on, I mean.
And wide receiver, what? 5 and
goodness,
4 and 5?
5 and 6, 4 and 5. Because, Reed got knocked out, and Dobbs got knocked out, and Watson was already out. Yeah.
We're down to,
tough game.
Like Wicks, Heath, and Melton, I think, at the end.
Yeah. But just to like kind of circle back to what we were talking about, which is comparing the team to, Super Bowl contenders. I mean, that game was closer than the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl were, is all I'm going to say.
Yes.
And the Eagles were
a lot closer to the Super Bowl.
I think in retrospect, that Eagles team was kind of a juggernaut. And
the defense was crazy good.
Defense crazy good.
And the offensive line was good.
Offensive line great, weapons great, running game great. The only thing that was like kind of variable was like how Hurts would play. And we saw in the Super Bowl, if Hurts plays great, that team's almost impossible to beat. Like they'll blow you out by 40 because Hurts played fantastically in that Super Bowl. Now there were other games in the playoff runs where he played more about, average. And then like the Eagles were still winning those games, which is like a testament to how great that roster was, which I think is a testament to, the kind of team you need to have, which, Brian Gutekunst has talked about and Matt LaFleur has talked about, where it's like you need to be able to win in different ways. And like the strength of the team as a whole and being able to find ways to win and, being able to win with defense, being able to win with the running game, being able to win grinding it out, being able to win by getting explosive plays, having games where the quarterback carries you, having games where the running back carries you. It's the, whole conglomerate of that team really is a testament to what it takes to win a Super Bowl. But it kind of shows like just how good that team was, that like, hey, even when Hurts isn't playing great, they're still winning these playoff games. And then when he does play well, they just blow the other team out of the water. And I think it's, comparing the Packers to the Eagles, that game wasn't super close, but at the same time, it was closer than some of the other playoff games that the Eagles played.
Yeah, they were a lot closer than the Chiefs, for example.
The Chiefs or the Commanders, so... Yeah. And I think the Rams obviously played the Eagles the closest of any of those playoff games because they really had a chance there at the end. Like they had a drive to go win that game. But, Packers second closest, so, third, fourth runner up, fourth, fifth runner up, I don't know. But anyway, so just kind of looking back directly to this past year when you're like comparing the Packers to the Super Bowl winners, it's kind of hard to say how close they were, but, they were very competitive in week 1 against the Eagles and then less competitive in the playoffs against them. But, it is what it is. I would hope we don't see Travis Glover, at left guard this year, but I guess you never know.
At least not in the playoffs.
At least not in the playoffs, but I guess you never know. But anyway, moving away from kind of a more granular talk about specifically this past Super Bowl, let's start talking about these Super Bowl teams, as a whole. So we went back and we looked at the last 10 Super Bowls, the last 10 winners, and then also the last 10 runners-up because, making a Super Bowl, you're still like in the mix there. But so anyway, we looked at those 20 teams and we kind of looked at how they stacked up on offense and on defense. And then we kind of looked at specific pieces of the offenses and defenses as well, whether that be, passing, rushing, pass blocking, run blocking, coverage, pass rush, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, Dad, do you want to start us off with looking at the offenses of these Super Bowl winners? Where do the Packers need to get to? What like markers do they need to hit, like compared to the rest of the league?
How close are they?
And how close are they in order to be one of these Super Bowl teams?
Yeah, so I'll start off with the total offense, and I'll be mostly talking about the PFF grades. I might sprinkle in EPA per player DVOA here once in a while if it looks particularly different. Most of the time, these numbers are all closely aligned. So let's talk about the Super Bowl winners first, and then I'll talk about the winners plus the runners up together as a group. And basically, whether the goal is to win the Super Bowl or just get there, you want to think about it in two different ways. Which one you're happy with?
Yeah.
So for Super Bowl winners, the median, and I'll be talking about the rank, not the raw score, but their rank in the league for that particular year, not within the 10-year period.
Yeah, just to control
just within that year.
And to control for era a little bit, because, even though it is only a 10-year span, football does change a lot in 10 years. I mean, if you go back and look at what offenses and defenses look like back in 2015, 2016, it's a lot different than it looks today.
Yeah, we're going back to like mid-'80s football now, it seems like.
I know. Run the rock.
Or 70s.
Exactly.
So Super Bowl winners, the median rank in PFF grade was 5.5, and similar in EPA per play and DVOA. The number of teams that were ranked in the top 5 in the year in total offense, basically half of them. 5 of the 10 teams were ranked in the top 5. And only 2 teams were ranked outside of the top 10. And there's one glaring outlier, and that's the 2015 Denver team, which was 21st. The next closest is probably 11th or 12th or something. Is not that much different, just a little bit outside. But that Peyton Manning, after his arm was no longer working team, that had a really bad offense, but made up for it with a elite defense.
Yeah, and so the takeaway there is you have to have you pretty much have to have a top third of the league offense unless you have a truly special defense, because that defense is all time. I mean, you got Von Miller on one side of the pass rush, you got DeMarcus Ware still at the tail end of his prime on the other end. You have playmakers, and that's Von Miller, peak of his powers. Von Miller, unblockable, could not be stopped in that Super Bowl. And so you need to have a good offense or have a truly, truly special defense. And honestly, I'm not even sure if you could get away with that these days, in this modern NFL. I don't know if you could get away with having a bottom 10 offense and then just just pray that your defense is that talented anymore. I don't even know if that's still possible, to be honest.
It might not be. The rules change in terms of how much contact you can make, how you can hit people. And so it just changes what kind of plays are, allowed or work anymore. And then if we, then to look at the sort of all the Super Bowl winners and losers over the last 10 years, those 20 teams, the median for offensive performance actually gets better. It's 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Of those Super Bowl runner-ups of those 10 teams, 4 of them were number 1 overall on offense.
Which is kind of funny that the offenses are actually better when you include the losers, which it's just a weird little statistical phenomenon.
So if you want to be a Super Bowl runner-up, be number 1 in offense.
I guess
I think there was just one number 1. Was there one number 1 on the winners, and 4 in the losers? And then for top 5 teams that are in the top 5, 13 of the 20, so over half of them were top 5 teams. And only 3 of the 20 were kind of, would you say, even not elite, but over 8 or double digits. And still the same outliers, only Denver. None of the runners-up had an offense as bad as Denver's offense that year. And then so what do we really care about? Where are the Packers? How do they, at least in their most recent version? Last year, they were 10th in PFF. So kind of a little bit outside the typical ranking, which seems to be, on the edge of 5. But if we look at DVOA instead, then they're 3rd. And so then that ranking puts them in kind of firmly in the group, as opposed to the PFF ranking, which puts them on the outside, not eliminated, but a little bit less likely.
In some ways, looking at last year is kind of an apt description of the Packers on the outside looking in of that true contender group, because when they played a lot of teams, they would win and they would look really good. And then when they played those, elite, top of the conference teams, they would just be not quite good enough to beat those teams. And so it kind of does feel like, that's a bit apt. Now, reasons that this might improve for the Packers and they might be able to, jump into that, firm top 8, top 5-ish and like truly be kind of like a Super Bowl-ish offense. More investment along the offensive line and, bringing in Banks. Hopefully Morgan in his second year is able to contribute more, and then drafting Belton in the second round. And so hopefully you have some more stability along the offensive line. Now, if you look just last year, a big reason the Eagles were so good was because their offensive line was dominant, which we'll talk about in a second. We'll be looking at offensive line more specifically. Another reason for that is, a little more investment on the pass catchers. And then another, reason for that is more development from Jordan Love and more development from the passing game as a whole, and maybe just some natural regression for the pass catchers as well. But so there are ways for the Packers to get up to that group. But I think looking back to last year, you can kind of understand, looking at the numbers that Super Bowl teams have had and looking where the Packers were, it's kind of, it's in line with how the Packers looked comparing themselves to the true competitors of the NFL last year.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers are not a surprise. Like, yeah, we were good, but we weren't quite there. The fact that we couldn't beat any of the top teams we played against, we couldn't quite put it together.
Quite get over the top against
close,
any of those
but
teams.
Couldn't quite get there. You got to a bad start or something would happen, and we couldn't quite get there.
Yeah. But do you want to talk a little bit more specifically about the specific pieces of the offense? Because I think most people would kind of assume that to be in the Super Bowl, you would need some elite quarterback play, some elite passing offense. Is that necessarily true?
For the most part, yes. So if you look at the passing offense among Super Bowl winners, the median rank is fourth. So a little bit better than it was for the overall offense, which was 5.5. 8 of the teams were in the top 5 by PFF grade in passing offense. And only and of the 2 teams that were over 5, though, Philadelphia last year was 21st by PFF, and Denver in 2015 was 22nd.
And like, even if we're being nice to the Eagles and like, okay, we'll take out the Kenny Pickett snaps, that probably gets you up to like 17th, 16th. But still, their passing offense was kind of a little up and down for the course of the season for them. Yeah,
and so the Packers are firmly inside the group if you include those 2 outliers.
Yeah,
and if you look at the all the participants, winners and losers in the Super Bowl, you get 15 of the 20. 75% were in the top 5.
It's a quarterback league,
and with a median of 4, so about the same, but still a large part in the top 5. Only 4 of 20 were over 7. In the rank. So very few that were not like in the top quarter in the league. And again, the biggest outlier was still Denver, and then also the Eagles.
And the thing is, like, even looking at that Denver team, still a very experienced quarterback. Like, still someone who has played in a lot of playoff games, like, knows how to manage those situations, even if his body was failing him at that point. So like, still a capable quarterback. Like, even if the ranking is very low for that season, it is still Peyton Manning. And so speaking of the passing game, do you want to actually jump down to talking about the quarterback specifically and, whether or not we think that Jordan Love can be in that group? And then we'll talk a little bit more about the passing game as well for how the Packers stack up there.
Oh, you wanna go down to
yeah. Since we're talking about the passing offense, let's talk a little bit about the quarterbacks as well.
So if you look at the quarterback ranking, then for the Super Bowl winners, the median was 4.5 by PFF. So what I'm looking at here for the quarterbacks was their overall offensive grade, not just their passing grade.
Yeah.
So I want to give props to running quarterbacks.
Running matters.
Because I think it matters.
And honestly, we need Love to do it a little more. So hopefully he does this year.
So the median was 4.5, and the overall, if you look at the ones that were in the top 5 for quarterback rank, you have 6 of 10 were in the top 5 for the Super Bowl winners, and you get only 3 teams outside of the top 10 by PFF grade. Hurts at 12th for Philly in 2017, and Denver at 27th in 2015. So those were not good.
Yeah, not ideal, but even 12th is like, he was at 12th, but then he kind of turned it on in the playoffs a little bit in those last 2 games, like we mentioned. So it's like, you kind of need a quarterback playing at a top 10 level, mostly. Unless, like we talked about before, you have the true outlier defense that's like the Denver Broncos defense, where they were just one of the best defenses we've seen in the last 20 years.
Right. This is also this idea like you can get away with if you get a quarterback who gets like crazy hot in the playoffs, which
Yeah.
hurts last year, or you have like the Flacco year.
Flacco year, yep. A couple Eli Manning years, these things happen. Nick Foles, when Nick Foles just went
Foles.
out of his mind. Yeah, like these things like happen, but yeah.
And if
But
then if you include the winners and the losers, then the median is still 4.5. It doesn't really change much. The runner up teams add a few other quarterbacks who didn't do so well, like Garoppolo and Goff that year. Goff was not playing as well as he is now.
Yeah, he's definitely a better quarterback now than he was with the Rams, for sure.
Yeah, so that adds in a couple players in the double digits, as it were, who are outside of that top 5, top 7-ish range.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of seems fair to say that for the most part, you need either a guy who is a top 5-ish quarterback or a guy who hits a heater and starts playing like a top 5-ish quarterback for like a couple games or 2-3 games there in the playoffs. And so kind of looking at that and comparing that to that and the passing game, kind of looking at both of those together to where the Packers are, I think Love is on the borderline of that, 5 to 10 range of quarterbacks. And he could certainly improve to cement himself a little bit higher. But I do definitely think he is the type of quarterback who could hit a heater and just go on a hot streak there in the playoffs and play up to that top 5-ish level and be good enough to compete for Super Bowls, in my opinion.
We've seen it in the second half of 2023, where he was like the second best quarterback in the league over like an 8-week span. If you look at, want to compare the Packers specifically for just last season, they were, for passing offense, they were 18th last year by PFF. They move up a lot better. If you look at DVOA, they're like 3rd. So
tough schedule.
They faced a lot. They had a tough schedule. So,
but the thing is, it's going to be a tough schedule again this year. So it's like you can't.
Yeah,
like that's going to be a thing
more,
again.
Yeah, but it's more a measure of you can be that high and then if you're that good against the tough teams, then your chances in the playoffs are actually pretty good because a lot of these teams were good by DVOA. But then if you want to say, okay, well, last year was kind of a mess. Love was hurt for a lot of the year. In 2023, they were 7th in passing offense. So when he's playing without hurt, and that's not even like talking about the part of the year he's on the heater. That's just the whole season. They move up. It's a substantially better ranking when he's playing healthy. And similarly with the QB specific ranking. So last year he was 20th, which is higher. Which you get into. You need a defense like the 2015 Broncos to win. And then a year in 2023, he was up to like 12th by PFF and a little bit higher by some other metrics.
Yeah, and I think for the Packers passing offense to get up to like a Super Bowl level offense, because I don't think either of us think that the defense is going to be at 2015 Broncos. They just don't have they don't have a dominant pass rusher to do that.
I think that's fair to say.
They would need to add TJ Watt and have him play like prime TJ Watt for like that to happen. And I just don't foresee that happening. So let's talk about it through the lens of they're not going to be the 2015 Broncos. For the passing offense to get there, it kind of feels like a couple of things need to happen. First is I think that Matthew Golden needs to, first is Jordan Love needs to stay healthy and they need to protect him. Second is Matthew Golden needs to have like an immediate like impact of I'm not saying like a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase rookie year or a Puka Nacua rookie year, but like a good to quite good rookie year for a receiver. And then I do think that they need to figure out what went wrong with the quick game last year. And like obviously the other receivers need to bounce back. Like Reed needs to bounce back. Wicks needs to bounce back.
Some
positive regression in the
drops.
And you could maybe even say like, oh, they need to focus on Kraft more, et cetera, et cetera. I think they need to figure out what the heck went wrong with the quick game last year because it was way too dependent on big plays. We're just going to chuck it. And if we hit this 40-yarder, cool. And if we don't, we're going 3 and out. Like there was just far too little consistency in the passing offense last year. And so I think a lot of that came back down to the quick game where, in 2023, Love was like a top, I don't have the number right in front of me, but he was like a top 7, top 8-ish quick game quarterback by EPA per play. And then in 2024, they were down near like the low teens, I think it was, or like mid to like low 20s, high teens, like 18th to 21st. And so it just needs to be better. I think it needs to be a more consistent passing offense. And I think that plus, better play from the receivers, plus hopefully better health from Love, and plus hopefully some better O-line play can maybe work that out. But yeah, I mean, hopefully.
Yeah, and maybe the timing of those quick plays needs a little bit more, practice reps. That he also, I mean,
he wasn't able to
not
practice.
all that he couldn't plant because of his bad knee on certain throws, but also wasn't getting the practice reps to stay sharp. And maybe the players, the receivers, to stay sharp on what the ball looks like coming from Love.
Yeah, I mean, it's that quick game stuff is so timing based. Like yes, but also I do think they got a little too run heavy last year at times. I think they got a little too in love with the run game for stretches of the season, where it was like, okay, like we can't run on every first down. Like we're gonna have to do a little something.
And I'm a little worried that please don't like completely make over your team and the offensive line that's what you want to be your identity.
Yeah,
you just want to run the ball all the time.
And it's like I don't think Jacobs can do that again this year. Like he's a great player, but like we talked about it. It's a lot of
history
of workload for him.
Is not on
his side.
Your side to have that kind of workload 2 years in a row.
Yeah, but so for the passing offense to get to like where these Super Bowl teams have gotten to, just to kind of bring it back full circle, I think several things need to happen. I don't think it's just one thing, but I do think they have the pieces to get there, especially with some of the movement along the offensive line to hopefully give them some better, pass protection as well. And it was a good pass protecting line last year for the Packers, but I think some of the moves they've made could possibly improve that. And so do you want to talk about where the Packers might stack up pass protection wise versus some of these Super Bowl teams?
Okay, we'll go to that next. So when you look at pass blockings, these are the rankings by PFF grade for the whole team. This is just not I didn't go so granular as to figure out what the grade was for all the individual players and try to build it. I just went for their team pass blocking grade. The median rank for the Super Bowl winners was 7th best in the league. But only one of the 10 was in the top 5. 5 teams were between 6 and 10, and 2 teams were between 11 and 20. And the worst team was again Denver at 21st. So they're bad at protecting Manning as well when he had his arm was supposedly shot. Now, if you look at both the winners and the losers, then the pass blocking grade goes down a little bit. The median then is 9.5 instead of 7. You did get 3 teams in the top 5, but you do have half the teams in the top 10. But there were a total of 3 teams that were worse than 20th. So you've added in a few. You got a little more, basically a little more variance. You've got more teams in the teams in the top 5, more teams who are outside of the top 20. So you can get away with a little bit of different routes, I suppose you could say, to getting to and winning the Super Bowl, and instead of relying on the pass blocking. And then if you compare how the Packers were last year, they were 3rd in the league by PFF pass blocking grade. So firmly elite in the top of the league, and good, and definitely good enough to be, to fit in with Super Bowl winners and not be an outlier in any way.
Yeah, and you would hope that removing your worst pass blocker from the line in Josh Myers and replacing him with a guy who has been below average at pass blocking in Aaron Banks during his time in San Francisco, but better than Josh Myers at least, would at least raise the group of that, like the level of that group a little bit, and so get you even more firmly into that zone. And I think also with those additions, you kind of hope that the Packers kind of hope that, and also there's obviously the case where, hey, maybe, we have a new starting left tackle as well. Maybe Rasheed Walker's not the starting left tackle. Maybe it's Jordan Morgan. And there's obviously the chance that maybe Jordan Morgan's at right guard even. So who knows?
And presumably if Morgan replaces somebody, it's an upgrade. It's because he's better than the other player, whoever he replaces, was last year.
Yeah, and so who knows? It could be even better than it was last year. But I think the main reason for these changes, just to kind of also, talk a little bit more about the line as a whole, is to help with the run blocking. And I think that's where the Packers, as an offensive line, have really struggled the past couple of years and have really just kind of left the running backs out to dry, to be honest. And so we can talk about the run blocking, the run game a little bit as well.
The whole rushing offense and the run blocking is kind of an interesting story, actually.
Okay, we'll go into it.
Super Bowl. So shall we jump ahead to
yeah, because I feel like it feels like, to me, the pass blocking is not really a question for the Packers. I think they have a good enough pass blocking unit where it's like they are like, if we were just looking at pass blocking units, I feel like they're like a top 5, top 10 group in the league. And I think that is good enough to be a Super Bowl competitor. The question, I think, for the line is, how does the run blocking look? And I guess, how does that compare to, and the run game as well? Because, the run game was good last year, but at kind of, just in spite of the run blocking, because like Josh Jacobs was just playing like a man possessed, a man with his hair on fire. And I think their goal is like, hey, let's just not have to make him do that every single time. But anyway, you want to talk a little bit about what the run game and run blocking look like for these Super Bowl teams?
So after I go with this, you'll decide, is it the right strategy to bother going after the run game at all? Super Bowl winners, median PFF ranking in offensive rushing attack is 20th. 20th in the league. For the Super Bowl winners.
Surprising.
Top 5 ranked rushing offense by PFF, precisely 0 teams. We're in the top 5 by PFF ranking of their running. 5 teams were worse than 20th in their season in run grade by PFF for the year. The worst rankings were 2018 New England, which is 26th, and the 2021 Rams, who were 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this, a little bit, it depends on, some of this depends on like EPA per play versus DVOA versus PFF, that you get a little bit of variation in which ranking hates an offense the most. So there's a little bit, they don't always agree, but the consensus amongst all of them is you don't need to be great in the run game. Some of them are, by PFF, you can be bad. Some of the other ones you can be mediocre by the way they measure it. So, do you need to invest so much in a rushing attack?
Well,
and if you look at the winners and losers combined, then the median gets a little bit better, actually. 13 and a half for the rushing offense by PFF. And you do get 2 teams in the top 5 that were runners up.
And is that for the rushing offense? Do you see the same thing for the run blocking as well? Is that also like kind of something that you see there as well? Or is that more just like, hey, I'm just wondering, like, because my thought is like, if the run blocking is better ranked and then the rushing offense is not, that's just a don't invest in running backs, stat pretty much. Whereas if it's also the run blocking is lower, it's like maybe just don't invest in the running game at all. I don't know.
So if you look at the run blocking specifically, then it does not look so weird as the rushing game overall.
Mm-hmm.
That the run blocking, the median rank is 8th. And you do get 4 of the 10 teams ranked in the top 5. And no teams who were worse than 20th in run blocking. Denver's 2015 bad offense year was 15th in the league, so middle of the pack. So these teams generally have better run blocking.
Yeah, but then running game. So pretty much just
actually, what this tells you is
the running backs don't matter. Is pretty much what it tells you.
Do matter.
I would say no. I would say that says running backs
don't
matter.
Your rushing attack is bad, even though your run blocking is good.
Yeah, but you're
winning anyway.
But you're winning the Super Bowl. Exactly. Like your running back.
So here's the funny thing.
Your run blocking, but to pretty much, because if your rushing attack is bad, but your run blocking is good, essentially, therefore, the running back is grading out poorly, and you're winning the Super Bowl anyway. So that pretty much tells you the running backs don't really matter. But I do think there is a little bit of like dissonance there with what we're seeing in the modern NFL. Because just this past year, I mean, you see the team that won the Super Bowl invested pretty heavily. Well, like not monetarily like crazy, but one of their big addition was bringing in Saquon Barkley. And then he had one of the best running back seasons of all time. And they win the Super Bowl. They make the Super Bowl largely because of him. And then in the Super Bowl, he was kind of held in check a little bit. But they make the Super Bowl largely because of him. And you look at a lot of the teams that were, the top competitive teams, it was like, okay, the Lions invested heavily in running back. The Eagles invested heavily in running back. The Ravens invested heavily in running back. Although you do look at some of these other teams, Chiefs, almost no investment in running back. The Commanders, almost no investment in running back. The Rams, very little investment in running back. The Bills, James Cook was a second-round pick, but they're not paying him right now.
But the Chiefs have tried. They've used some high picks on running backs, not always successfully.
Yeah, but the Eagles, running backs that are I think that's just more further investment. Don't invest in running back. More further evidence. Don't invest in running backs because the guy they did draft in the first round flamed out of the league, and now they have a 7th rounder, and they brought in Kareem Hunt off the street, and that they were getting a passable enough running game. But I guess the takeaway is, at least over the last 10 years, having a good running back has not mattered. Although, if you want to look at the most recent example, it did matter for the Eagles. So, it's if you're waiting for the most recent Super Bowl appearance, maybe you could say it matters more than these numbers maybe indicate.
Yeah, the Eagles, for example, they were 4th in their run block rank. PFF only gave them 9th overall in the running game, the run offense, but they were 1st by EPA per play in rushing offense. So there's a little disparity in terms of which ranking system you use. So they're super elite by some. And that system doesn't give an overall ranking as low as the PFF grade does. And maybe it's just investing in the O-line in general.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little bit of covariance between overall run blocking grade and pass blocking grade that is confounding what we're seeing here. That the run blocking matters more than the rushing game overall. It's not that running backs matter or don't matter. It's you're co-varying the run blocking with the pass blocking. You're just getting good offensive linemen.
Exactly.
I think that is, if you're good, to me, seems like the simplest explanation.
If you're a good offensive lineman and you're good at pass blocking, you're probably still pretty good at run blocking. That's kind of that's the takeaway. And I think kind of to wrap up the offensive section of this, this bit, I think when you're looking at it from a Packers point of view,
yeah.
Piece by piece, I'm just going to, do they have a quarterback that you think is good enough? I think yes. And who can play at that, top 5, top 7-ish level for a playoff run? I think yes. Do they have an offensive line that can pass protect and run block? I think they've made the investments there where you would hope so. I guess is what they've made the investments there. And then for the passing game, they've made more investments in the receiving core this offseason, and you hope that would help out with the passing game as well. And then Josh Jacobs can hopefully buoy whatever, the run blocking is missing this year.
Right. So just to look at that run blocking, so you talked about how the run blocking mattered more than the running. The Packers were 22nd in run blocking last year, but 4th in PFF grade for the rushing attack.
Shout out Josh Jacobs. Shout out Matt LaFleur. Shout out Adam Stenovich. Shout out the coaching and the running game and the running back specifically, because the run blocking was just not good. Not good at all. It was you'd watch it.
So the Packers are kind of breaking this covariance of my theory of covariance of pass blocking and run blocking by being 3rd in pass blocking and 22nd in run blocking.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have the largest, deviation between the two of any team in the league.
I mean, in a lot of ways,
it'd be hard to beat it.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's kind of been the MO of the Packers offensive line, but I think that's what they're trying to get away from. I think they're trying to move towards a more balanced offensive line that's not, maybe not quite as good at pass blocking, but not 22nd in run blocking, and more hey, we'll be 9th in both of these things instead, I think is what they're hoping. But we'll see. They've made the investments there. Hopefully it pays off, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Any last things you wanted to say for the offense, or should we move over to the defense?
I think it's time to move over to the defense.
Okay, but so I think kind of just wrapping it up, we think that the Packers either have the pieces or have made the investments to where we think that the offense can get to the level that it needs to get to compete for Super Bowls. And I guess we'll see if they can stay healthy this year and if the additions that they made can be as impactful as we hope they can be. Moving on to the defense, though. So this is kind of interesting because looking at the offenses, you'd think okay, the takeaway is you need a good offense. Looking at the defenses, the takeaway is you need a good defense. And so maybe the takeaway is you just need a very balanced team to win a Super Bowl, because when you look at the last 10 Super Bowl winners, 8 of the 10 were top 5 by PFF in total defense. And 6 of the 10 were top 2. And so the old adage, defense wins championships, really does seem to hold true. The median rank of the Super Bowl winners in defense over the last 10 years is second. Is second. Like I said, 6 of the 10 were top 2. The biggest
bonkers.
Right? Isn't that crazy? Like every single Super Bowl winner over the last 10 years has been very good at defense, except for like the biggest outlier was the 2019 Chiefs, which had the 25th best defense. And even then, I do think that 25th is kind of belying maybe the talent on that defense, because they still had Chris Jones on the defensive line in his prime. They still had Steve Spagnuolo calling the plays. Like, they still had pieces on that defense that were quite good. They just weren't ranked very high, and I think they put together a better performance in the playoffs than they did in the regular season that year. And also, it helps to have Patrick Mahomes in his prime, Travis Kelce in his prime, Tyreek Hill in his prime, and like one of the most dynamic offenses we've ever seen. So that helps as well. But so even looking at all of the Super Bowl teams, 14 of the 20, so 70%, had top 5 defenses. And the median of just the teams who made the Super Bowl was the third ranked defense, which is pretty outstanding. And still the biggest outlier is that 2019 Chiefs team. And so to compare it to where the Packers were last year, they were better on defense than they had been, but they were still just 13th, which was up from where they were a year before, where they were 20th the year before, so they've improved. But they're going to need pretty much a similar jump like this year as they had last year in order to get to a point where they are a Super Bowl contending team on the defensive side of the football. And so I think when you look at what the defense was last year, I mean, it really comes down, I think, just holistically to the pass rush, like just not being good enough last year. And obviously the coverage wasn't perfect either. They struggled at times to guard the middle of the field. They struggled, at times guarding the slot as well, having kind of a revolving door of like rotation of guys playing in that spot, and just kind of a bit of inconsistency there as guys came and went in the lineup. But it really does feel like, for as good as the defense felt last year, and as much better as it felt from the year before to last year, they need to make another jump that big, which is kind of like shocking to think about.
Yeah, but moving up 7 spots is big.
Yeah, but they'd have to move up another 7, and then they'd still be outside the top 5, which would be like
that top 5.
Yeah, which would be like a 30%. Only 30% of the teams that have made the Super Bowl have been outside the top 5. So it's like you'd still be kind of unlikely in terms of a defensive type team to make the Super Bowl. It's like, it is incredible how good the defenses of these teams were that have made the Super Bowl the last 10 years. And it does just feel like they're just like a star player short there. But anyway, speaking about the pass rush, kind of moving on to that specifically, it's actually like these teams have not had as dominant pass rushes as I would have expected. So among the Super Bowl winners, only 4 of the 10 have had top 5 pass rushes. Only 6 of the 10 in the top 10. And 3 of the 10 were below 19th. I picked 19th because one of them was 19th. But, just to illustrate, 3 of the 10 were like below average in terms of pass rush. The median was just 8.5. And the outlier was the 2019 Chiefs, who were 30th. Which is like crazy to think about for a team that had Chris Jones in his prime along the defensive line. But, I guess.
Nobody else rushing the passer.
Yeah, and then all Super Bowl teams, only 8 of the 20 were in the top 5, 12 of the 20 in the top 10, 6 of the 20 below 19, median also 8.5, and 2019 Chiefs, I mean, it's hard to have an outlier past 30. So, like, yeah, they're still the outlier. And last year, the Packers were 17th in pass rush. So, like, they're, not quite near the median, but they're, would be better than 6 of the 20 teams that had made, the playoffs. So,
Or made the Super Bowl.
Or made the Super Bowl, rather, sorry. Better than 30% of the teams that had made the Super Bowl. So, like, from that aspect, it was good enough. So, maybe if they can just get a little bit better than that, and then just really increase their, like, coverage and, et cetera, they can be, like, good enough where it's like, hey, we're still a top 5 defense, even if our pass rush isn't as good. There have been teams that have had pass rushes not that good that have made the Super Bowl and just really relied on everything else being perfect around it. That's possible. That's, I think, maybe their best avenue, because I don't think that they've made enough additions on the pass rush, and I don't think just hiring a defensive line coach is going to fix everything. So I'm dubious in the fact that their pass rush is going to improve that much from last year, but maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe if the coverage just takes another jump, maybe that's the avenue to doing that. I don't know. But I guess, are you surprised at all? Because I think that was the most surprising thing to me, was that the pass rush was really not as dominant for these teams as you might have expected.
I'm surprised because we talk about a lot that the one problem that the Packers seem to have on defense, the main problem anyway, that we thought, was their inability to get off the field at the end of games, with it, that it seemed to need pressure to do so. So that's a little bit surprising that these teams are performing without that. The other thing to say is, like, well, the player who's going to fix all this is going to be Edgerrin Cooper in year 2, baby. He's just going to be wreck and shop all over the field.
Yeah, and we've already brought it up a couple of times, so I feel like we might as well just, bring up the actual numbers, because we've talked about how one of the big problems for the Packers last year was just their inability to get off of the field, essentially when they really needed to. And so these numbers were looking at essentially the last drives where the Packers needed to get a stop to end the game or win the game or keep the game tied or get a chance to get the ball back and take a lead. So kind of looking at that last year, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 essentially do or die drives for the Packers in 2024. So looking at it, there was the Bears one where they did not get a stop essentially, but they ended up blocking the field goal. So that kind of does not count as a stop for the defense, in my opinion.
That's a special team stop.
That's a special team stop. Minnesota, in the Week 17 game, I believe it was, they could not stop Minnesota from getting a first down to get the ball back. They had that little dump off to Cam Akers, which really pissed me off at the time, if I remember correctly. They had the Lions, where they could not get a stop, essentially with 3:38 left. And then they came down. I think that was the second Lions game where they came down and kicked that field goal to win it. The Packers could not get off the field with a game tied. There was another one, Bears, which was the end of the season. So maybe that one doesn't count as much because they weren't playing their starters. Yeah, so you could ignore that one. The Jags, when they let the Jaguars march it down the field on them and score the game-tying touchdown, which was mind-boggling at the time. There was the Houston one where they let Houston march down the field, and this was not the end of the game, but they let Houston march down the field and kick that field goal to take the lead. And so that one you could say maybe doesn't count as the last drive of the game, but they could have gotten off the field there and actually won the game, but then the offense had to come back on the field and win it. And then the Rams, they did get a stop, and then the Colts, they did get a stop. But so out of 8 tries, and really 7, I guess, if you don't want to count the Bears one, they only got stops on 2 out of 7. And only against the Rams with, not really any of their receivers playing, and then the Colts, which, the Colts offense was kind of a nightmare last year for them. But so for the most part, not great. And so we've talked about this before. It really did feel like last year the biggest issue for the Packers was being able to get off the field on those, gotta have it drives. And it really did feel like a lot of that was just like, okay, if the pass rush can't make a play, if you don't have guys who can make plays, like along the defensive line, guys are just going to pat the ball back there, and the defense is going to be so afraid of getting beat over the top that they're going to play a little bit more prevent-y. They're going to give a little space, more space in front of them, and then the teams are just going to march the ball down the field on you.
Go view that Bears-Packers game if you want to see what that looks like.
Exactly. And so it was just, and it's something that I don't know if they fixed, but maybe with these numbers, maybe it's not necessarily something you need to fix, because when you actually look at the coverage units of these Super Bowl winners, just to kind of, go back to what we were looking at with the Super Bowl winners, Super Bowl participants, 7 of the 10 Super Bowl winners were in the top 5 in coverage, and no more inside the top 10. But the median was 2.5 in terms of rankings amongst the league, and the lowest was 16th, which is the 2019 Chiefs. So every single team was above average in coverage who won the Super Bowl, which, like, the lowest being 16th is pretty surprising. In terms of all Super Bowl teams, 13 of the 20 were in the top 5, 15 of the 20 were in the top 10 with a median of 3.5, and the lowest is still 16th. So of all the teams that have been in the Super Bowl over the last 10 years, every single one of them had above average coverage units, which I think is maybe one of the more surprising takeaways, because I would have thought that pass rush mattered a lot more than coverage, but maybe these numbers tell you that it doesn't.
I mean, maybe what it tells you, there's been this little bit of a mantra that the coverage matters because of the quick game that so many teams utilize, that you can't get home fast enough to stop these quick passes, and so you need to have coverage.
Maybe, and maybe that's the takeaway is that I don't know, because all my life I have thought I'm still of the mind that pass rush is more important than coverage. And because like in order to have a good coverage unit, you really need to have like no weak links at all. Whereas in order to have a good pass rush, you really just need like 1 to 2 really good guys, and then the rest can just be whatever, and like those guys can take over the game. And it just feels like it's so easy to scheme around what's happening on the coverage side if they're like no one can guard someone forever, I guess is kind of my takeaway. It doesn't matter how good you are.
If the pass rush is really bad, it just can never get home, like eventually the cover is going to break down.
Yeah. But I mean, these numbers say that, maybe in practice that's not as true, but I think at the same time, even the worst pass rush unit, which was the Chiefs, which was somehow 30th, still had an elite guy who you had to get a stop on. So maybe that's like the thing is like, even if your pass rush unit as a whole isn't super dynamic, maybe no matter what, you need that one guy who can just go get a win at the end of a game. Like where it's like, hey, it's like the classic Clay Matthews. It is time. It is time. You need to go make a play right now for us to have a chance to win this game. And so even if your pass rush unit as a whole doesn't grade out well, as long as you have one of those guys who can get a win when you really need it, whether it's Chris Jones for the Chiefs, whether it's Jalen Carter for the Eagles, whether it's, down the list, like maybe you just need one of those guys. And so I guess the question is there anyone on the Packers that can be that guy? And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there is.
I don't think we'll know until the season starts and hope that there's going to be improvement, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it would take dramatic improvement, I would say. Like, to be fair. Like, I don't think it's any of those guys right now where it's like, oh, like, I think that's there's better than a coin toss, ability for that to happen. I would say most of them are unlikely. The closest is Gary or Wyatt, right? Like, right. That's what you're hoping Gary is based on how much you're paying him. That's what you're hoping Wyatt is based on like where you drafted him. And so I think in order for just to kind of bring it back to how close we think the Packers are, I think coverage-wise, the Packers are pretty close. I forgot to mention this, but the Packers are right there for coverage. I mean, they were the third best, coverage team last year by PFF grade, up from 18th the year before. And yeah, some of that is buoyed a little bit by some turnover regression, which, probably will kind of regress back a little bit, which I think is fair. But in terms of coverage units, they are good enough right now to be a Super Bowl level team. They are at that level with what the Super Bowl level teams have been. I think the thing is, can you get that pass rush up a little bit higher, or maybe the coverage just plays out of their mind again this year. And like we mentioned, like there have been low level pass rush units, but even those ones have needed a star. So maybe one guy takes a step along the pass rush. It's still okay otherwise. And then the coverage unit plays up to that level again. But I think we've talked about, there is some angst around the corner room. I know you and I have talked about, we're not super worried about that, right?
So maybe what this says is you should be investing in safeties and not corners.
I do.
You want to have an elite coverage unit, or
I mean,
you can. That's a way to get an elite coverage unit is by investing in safeties. Maybe there's more than one way to do it. And what the Packers have done is they're getting elite coverage by investing in a good safety group.
I mean, all you got to do is sign the best safety in the league on the free agent market, draft another one in the 4th round who's immediately a top 20 safety in the league, and then sign a career slot corner to a low market deal who ends up being a pretty solid outside corner, and then draft another outside corner in the 7th round, and you're right there. You're right there, baby. But no, I do think that...
Well, you know what? That's funny thing is, that's a story, I think, of like almost every Super Bowl team is they luck into some signings like the Eagles.
It's true.
Getting Zach Bond
for nothing.
Hitting on both of their early corners.
As a Zach Bond believer, since he was drafted in the NFL, I feel super validated from how he played last year because I loved him coming out of Wisconsin. And yeah, there's a little bit of Badger bias there, but like I remember watching him and be like, this guy is kind of good. Like this guy is like pretty versatile. Like, and then he got drafted by the Saints, and I was like, oh, that's a good pick for them. And then I just never heard from him again, so I kind of assumed he had like busted out of the league, and I was like, oh, wrong on that one. But never ever sell. Never sell your stock on any player ever. You never know. But anyway, my Josh Jackson stock is still holding. But anyway, my Denzel Mims stock still holding on that one too. But what was I going to say? No, yeah. So for coverage, they're right there. For pass rush, you'd like them to be better, but they could be there. And then looking lastly, but not leastly, I guess that's a saying. Run defense. Super Bowl winners 4 out of the 10 in the top 5, only 4 out of 10 in the top 10. Median was 11. And the lowest was the 2019 Chiefs, who were 32nd, which
I do remember them being bad that
stunning.
year. Now you think about it, it's like, okay, let's start my running back against the Chiefs this week.
Exactly. And then all Super Bowl teams, only 4 out of 20 in the top 5. So none of the Super Bowl losers were in the top 5. 5 out of 20 in the top 10, median of 14.5. And Chiefs still an outlier, but not nearly as big of an outlier. There were a lot of bad run defenses here. And so the Packers 24th, which is surprising to me that they were ranked this low in run defense, and there's a chance they get worse without Slayton. But
so they're trying to follow the 2019 Chiefs just pathway.
Need crazy explosive offense and Devontae Wyatt to turn into Chris Jones, and we're right there. But anyway, run defense I think should hopefully be good enough compared to these teams.
24th, and we felt like the run defense was better last year.
I was shocked to see 24th. I was like, what? Like, because when did we get run over? Really? Like, were there? I mean, the Texans game a little bit, the Lions game a little bit, and like I'm just looking back, like because like we held up pretty well against the run against the Eagles. We held up. I guess the Colts ran on us a little bit. I don't know. I didn't feel like the run defense was nearly that bad. Although there are concerns that without Slayton, it could get worse this year.
Interesting. I'm looking at 2024. We were 21st, so also not great, but a little better. And yet the run defense felt better.
You mean 2023, 21st?
I mean 2023 we are 20. In 2023 we were 21st, and in 2024 we are 24th.
But it felt better last year, which is weird.
It felt better last year. That's
a weird stat right there. I don't know. That's surprising to me. I would not.
Maybe it's just the tackling was better.
Maybe that's kind of noisy. So that's kind of year to year.
The impression that you get is that the tackling was significantly better last year than the year before, and so you think of that as being better run defense, but it actually wasn't.
Yeah. But anyway, wrapping up the defense here, I think the takeaway is the coverage unit would have to be the star of the show for the Packers, and that has been a blueprint for several teams, over the course of these Super Bowls. The pass rush, if it's going to be as how it was last year, one guy needs to take a step forward and be like a star playmaker, or the whole unit needs to take a decent jump up. And then the run defense is, there have been bad run defenses to win the Super Bowl before, so that's not necessarily a death knell.
Yeah, including worst in the league.
Yeah,
so,
well, 30.
There's still hope.
Yeah, 32nd. You're right. Yeah, 32nd. Yeah, So I think the big thing is either one guy needs to take a big step along the pass rush and be a playmaker, get you off the field on third downs, get you off the field on those last drives, or the whole unit needs to take a massive jump up there. But the coverage unit should be good enough. And then finally, just to wrap things up here, special teams.
Just a little something special added on to the end of this episode.
Yeah, 5 of the 10 were in the top 5, but only 1 of the last 5 were in the top 5. And then 5 out of 10 were in the top 10, but only 1 of the last 5 were in the top 10. So we've had some bad special teams win the Super Bowl recently. Median of 7. The 2020 Buccaneers were 30th in special teams, somehow still won the Super Bowl. And then in terms of all Super Bowl teams, 7 out of 20 in the top 5, 8 out of 20 in the top 10, median of 14.5. Not as many outliers. Special teams of the losing teams were pretty rough, so like that could lose you a Super Bowl, but it has not been prohibitive to making a Super Bowl, and that's good for the Packers because they were 32nd last year and have been around. They were 28th the year before. Yeah, I mean just by being terrible. I mean the kicking game was awful for the first half of the year, and then in the back half of the year,
that's got to be a big hit. Having all these missed field goals has got to give you a big hit in the special team score.
And then, they give up that wacky misdirection punt return to the Bears, which
where's the ball? It's like Keystone Cops. They should be playing yakety sax during that play.
And then they were terrible on special teams in the playoff game. So it's But so the special teams, I mean, can we just get to 23rd? Can we get to 22nd? Can we get into the middle third of the league, please? Can we?
Doesn't have to be top half, right?
No, can we just be
third?
20th?
We'll take middle third.
I would take 20th. I would be if you were hey, the special teams will be 20. Sign me up right now. But yeah, so special teams. I mean, there have been bad special teams that made the Super Bowl. There have been bad special teams that have lost teams to the Super Bowl, though. So that's kind of
bad
a little
special teams that have lost first round of the playoffs.
Exactly. So it's just if you have bad special teams, you're just introducing variance, and it might not burn you, but it also might. So it's Do you really want to do that? But anyway, I don't think we really need to spend too much time on that. It screwed them last playoffs. It screwed them 2 years ago. Like it has screwed them like multiple years in a row. Like it messed them up the last 2 playoff losses and then the one before that too, also to the Niners. So maybe it does matter a lot. Maybe they do need to just figure out what the hell is going on over there. Honestly, just promote Bisaccia to assistant head coach, get a new special teams coordinator, and let's run it back. And even Bisaccia said, I let Matt LaFleur down last year because we screwed up so many times.
It's like, I feel like Bisaccia's best coaching trait is not special teams. It's the other stuff he does.
It's just vibes. He's a great vibes coach, and he brings in guys like the free agents want to come here because of him. Like and those are useful qualities, but can we just get someone else coaching the special teams? Like that's all I'm asking for. But anyway, any last things that you want to touch on here, or should we wrap this one up?
I think we wrap it up now. Okay. But we're not. We're getting close. We're getting close to real football adjacent.
Yeah, I mean, next week we're going to do our training camp preview. So once again, stay tuned here. Subscribe, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We'll be previewing training camp. What battles are we watching for? What players are we looking at most closely, et cetera, et cetera. So check that out. Once again, follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer for updates on newest episodes and, content from other Packers content creators, reports from training camp, roster moves, et cetera, et cetera. One-stop shopping, everything Titled Town. Once again, that's at Father Son Packer on Blue Sky. Thank you again for listening. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.